live over the internet at www.qac.org. These media broadcasts provide county citizens an opportunity to watch and review our scheduled public sessions. We acknowledge your participation, and by attending, you acknowledge that this session is both recorded and aired. The scheduled agenda is available on the information table just outside of our meeting room. Press and public comment will be taken and is limited to 3 minutes. If you care to speak, you must sign the sheet on the information table outside. Comments longer than 3 minutes can be submitted in writing for the Commissioner's review. During the meeting, we would ask that you turn off all electronic devices and hold personal conversations outside of our meeting room. We will now stand and be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Commission President Jim Moran.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you can remain standing for a moment of silence for the victims of Hurricane Dorian, and thank God that we got spared that wrath. Thank you.
All right, we just had a closed session for a pending land acquisition and a personnel matter. So next we move into the approval of today's agenda. The agenda for today's meeting, September 10th, 2019, along with the regular minutes from your August 27th Commissioners meeting and the Roads Board and Sanitary Commission meetings from August 13th, were distributed electronically for your review. Are there any additions and or corrections?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. That brings us to our first press and public comments section. Thank you for taking the time to express your views to the County Commissioners during this public comment period. Comments are limited to 3 minutes in length. Comments longer than 3 minutes should be submitted in writing. When you come forward, please speak clearly in the standing microphone, state your name, address, and topic of interest. Keeping with the dignity of the office, we ask that all views be expressed in a respectful and civil manner. The Commission respects your desire and right to convey your message freely. We ask as a courtesy to the Board and our citizens that you respect the Commissioner's request and refrain from naming citizens and name-calling when offering any critique.
Mary Margaret.
Good evening, Commissioners. On your desks already there is a single sheet of paper with photographs on it, and that is the work that has been done, the grant that we received from Maryland Historic Trust. It is brought in 95% complete at this point, under budget and ahead of schedule. And so much so that the state has given us permission to do the chimney as well. So we will begin next week working on the chimney. We're doing really well, and structurally that house is okay. That corner that was falling down and failing is 100% complete and structurally sound. So there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Linda Friday.
Linda Friday with the Queen Anne County Chamber of Commerce. First, before I talk about the other items, I just want to go on public record that the Chamber of Commerce has not taken a position on the third bridge. I know there was some information that went out, and I publicly wanted to go on record for that. So if you could just make sure that everybody knows that we have not taken a position on the third bridge. Second, I just want to thank the commissioners for all that you did for Going Purple. I love the wreaths. I guess, Margie, did you make those? Oh, they're beautiful. And all of you were in purple. So thank you for supporting QAC Goes Purple. We had the kickoff last Thursday. It was a great event, and just very proud of our community for the support that they give us for this unfortunate cause, but we have to bring awareness to our community. The third thing I'd like to talk about, I'm sure Commissioner Jack Wilson's going to even talk more about it at the end, is our Project Bright Future event, and that's something that we're trying to keep out in the public, is creating opportunities for our youth. It's an event that's going to be on September the 25th at Chesapeake College from 6:30 to 8:30. I would encourage you to spread the word for us. We've done a lot of social media, we've done videos, we've just done a lot of advertising for this. You're going to start seeing commercials about this program. It's really important that we encourage those students that have chosen not to go to college or follow that path, that they do have another opportunity. So those are a few things that are happening next Wednesday, and I see the school system is here tonight. Next Wednesday we will be celebrating our Teacher of the Year, and I think there are 46 new teachers. So we have invited all of the new teachers to attend our event. It's going to be at Harris's Crab House from 5 to 6:30. So we would love to see at least a few of you there. And it's going to be at Harris's again from 5 to 6:30. So we're very excited to have our new teacher there and all of our new educators. So
what's that date again?
it's next Wednesday. It's Wednesday the 18th. It's normally Thursday, but there's another event on that Thursday, so we've moved it to Wednesday. So if you come, we would love to have you. And again, Project Bright Future is really a big thing. We would love to have you there. And thank you, Todd Mon, for your support in also making this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I had who signed up to speak. Would anybody else like to speak? Seeing nobody, we're going to go ahead and close press and public comment.
Okay, Commissioners, next up we have the Department of Public Works. So if they want to come on down, we have Public Works Director Alan Quimby and Steve Cahoon, our Public Facilities Planner. And if you want to flip to tab 2, item 1 on page 1 is a letter of support to Maryland Department of Transportation Authority for all electronic tolling. I believe Steve's going to present that information to you.
Thank you. MDTA is holding a public hearing this Thursday, September 12th at Kent Island High School, and the hearing is from 6 to 8, and they're taking public comment on a couple changes to their tolling policies. One, they're providing a new payment method, which is pay by plate. Basically, you can put a credit card on file, and as you go through, it'll read your plate and charge your credit card. So it's a different way to pay instead of stopping to pay cash or Easy Pass. They're also providing discounts if you're doing pay by invoice. If you go through and they read your plate and you pay early, then you can get a 15% discount on that toll. And then they're also reducing rates for motorcycles and vehicles pulling trailers. Basically, they reassessed how they evaluated vehicles. Those types of vehicles don't have as much wear and tear on the bridge as large heavy-duty trucks with the same number of axles, so they're reducing the rates for them. And since MDTA's taken public comment on these changes, we also wanted to take the opportunity to make the request that the Bay Bridge go to all electronic tolling as soon as possible. The commissioners have continuously made this request to MDTA during the SHA tour, during the MDOT tour every year. So we are putting that in writing with our request as well.
And so based on the last conversation I think we had, we're still, 8 months? 9 months before it's even
Yeah, during
available,
our,
or what?
during our the MDOT tour last year, they said it was approximately 2 years away, so
Okay.
we're another year out. But if we remove the toll booths and remove them and go to all electronic toll,
But aren't they doing projects now with the new, remember they said that they couldn't do they didn't want to do the Bay Bridge because they were switching vendors, and then they didn't want to have to do a re-up to the existing tolls, but aren't they doing some now with the new vendor? Am I understanding that they are actually doing projects?
Other bridges, yes.
Right, so they have the new vendor in place right now, so they're
not
just,
for the Bay Bridge.
right, we're just down in the queue is what I'm getting at. We're not the top in the queue is the Bay Bridge, which probably has more traffic
But it
on it than
was
any of them.
like 2 or 3 years out, wasn't it?
They could break the contract. Come on, it's the state, number one. Number two, they've got $100 million owed to them from people that aren't paying their tolls.
Right.
So I think that happens, the most frequent location is the Bay Bridge.
Absolutely.
So I think that's probably playing into this as well. And three, maybe they just don't want to see what'll happen when they take down those tolls and traffic runs smoothly. I don't know, so. But this letter addresses that in an ever so polite way.
Okay. Okay, so if you're, have reviewed the letter and you're okay with it, we just make a
I
motion.
move to sign a letter to Mr. Pete Ron, Secretary of Maryland Department of Transportation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, if you want to convene as the Sanitary Commission, we have 2 items for the Sanitary Commission. These are pending, or
I'll make the motion.
items.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, Commissioners, both of these items have to do with the allocation policy, but are distinctly different. The first item has to do with, we want to modify the allocation policy going forward. The second item has to deal with projects that had already violated, for lack of a better term, the existing allocation policy. So it's a little bit confusing in that regard. If you recall, we had a water and sewer plan amendment some time ago, July 23rd, where we considered making the deposit for new allocation requests going forward to be non-refundable. Part of the issue was capacity is starting to dry up, and we've had projects that were lingering for up to 9 years and never moving forward. So we just felt that we needed to do something to compel future developers to be more active in pursuing their designs and reaching fruition.
Alan has pointed out while you're on there, the old policy was to be non-refundable, right? It changed sometime.
The old policy back originally until 2003 or so, it was non-refundable.
Right, so this is
And in
really
that
going back
area-
to the way it was.
Correct. We had one person testify at the hearing, Joe Stevens, who's an attorney for a lot of the developers, and he made the point that nobody's going to put, for a large development, they're not going to make a non-refundable deposit until they get a portion of the way through the planning and zoning review process. They're fearful that they may not get approval, in which case they would lose their money. And by design, we require them to have the allocation commitment early in the design review process, because if you don't have allocation, you don't have a project. So I thought personally that it had some merit. So what we agreed to between he and I to bring to you was that for the first 12 months, it remains refundable. After that 12 months, it becomes non-refundable. And then there's other milestones along the way that should they not meet either of those milestones, the only way they either lose their deposit or they have to put up another 10% non-refundable deposit, which I think is fair to some degree. But that's what we're bringing to you for your consideration tonight.
And just to remind everybody, this is policy. This isn't law. So this is a guideline that we anticipate following, and there will be times when the director of DPW or our county administrator modifies that. So I don't think that that's something that, and I guess that's in your public works agreement that you could also, for instance, if somebody gets challenged in court, I mean, I'm sure there'll be something in the public works agreement that will address those type of issues. This is just a pretty much standard format coming into the door. You want to do something in Queen Anne's County, this is what you're looking at for water and sewer.
Yeah, if a court challenge happened early in the process, I would suggest that we just stop the clock. Just wait until it was resolved one way or the other.
We do what?
Just stop the clock. Stop,
Right.
You
Correct, right. Just put it on hold until it's
Right.
resolved and then move forward again coming out of it. All right.
Can we write that into the policy as it exists, or is it?
Well,
something
that could be
that's
in the public works agreement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And,
So this, so any of the projects moving forward are affected by this?
none of the projects
In the queue.
currently in the
queue.
queue are affected by this. This is from today forward.
Right.
Because we've already sent all those letters to
Right.
them, and they're,
So when does this go into effect?
Tonight, perhaps,
as soon as we vote on it.
whenever you wish to go move ahead
So
with
there's
it.
not a 45-day waiting period for this to?
Well,
It's
not an ordinance.
It's just policy, yeah.
Okay.
So I will make the motion. I move to revise the allocation policy to allow the 10% deposit to only be refundable for 12 months from the date of the granting of the allocation, after which time the deposit is either refunded or becomes non-refundable.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Is there an opportunity or a chance to change that 12 months to 24 months? I mean, is that
think
out of
that-
the realm of possibility, or?
Well, no, and nothing's out of the realm of possibility, but I think it's unusual for a project to take 24 months to get through planning and zoning. Steve could probably speak to that.
Why would
more so
you
than
want
I.
24?
Mike, could you come up for a second? Thank you.
And Alan, you may want to just go over there is some time after they make that initial deposit for the project owner to get through the review process, meeting certain milestones, which gives them a little more time, so you may want to review that as
Right.
well.
So if the allocation is granted by you all, they have to make a deposit 10%, 30 days. For the first 12 months, it remains refundable. Then it becomes non-refundable. They have another 12 months to get to conditional final approval. So they have 24 months total to get through planning and zoning, of which the first 10 is refundable, first 12 is refundable, the second 12 it is not. Once you get past that milestone, they have 6 more months to execute the public works agreement, and then they have another 12 months after that to initiate construction.
Okay.
So from the time they get allocation granted, they have what, 39 months?
36 months?
39.
39. So,
But it becomes non-refundable after 12, currently as written.
all right, so, Mr. Quimby is correct in the fact that 12 months is plenty of time to get through.
As a policy, I think it's fine. And I'm glad that Mr. Moran made that distinction, because it's a policy. And there are milestones along the way for development to get approval. It's concept plan, then it's preliminary, and then final. And generally, once they get concept plan approval, they're pretty much assured that they will move forward in the process. And so that generally takes about 12 months or less. And if it's a policy and Alan and I can see that they're moving forward with their approval and it might take 13 or 14 months, then he has the ability to extend that. But I think as a policy, 12 months is a good barometer or guideline. And then in certain instances, if we need to extend it, then we have the ability to do that.
Okay.
So this is just to sort of motivate the developer along the
Absolutely.
process to not.
And that's been
sit
the
on their hands.
problem, not sitting on their allocation.
And not that we have a tremendous amount of concern about allocation, but we're certainly in a different place than we were 10 years ago, perhaps when some of these projects came to fruition in the beginning. Our allocation is a different number, or is a different amount today than it was back then. Okay.
And it's just not fair for somebody to sit on, in one instance, 36,000 gallons of allocation for 9 years, and in my
agree.
opinion, hasn't lifted a finger.
I agree. Okay, that's the only question I had.
All righty, so seeing there's no more discussion, we are voting to move, that we revise the allocation policy to allow the 10% deposit to only be refundable for the 12 months from the date of the granting of the allocation, after which time the deposit is either refunded or becomes non-refundable. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second item, as I indicated earlier, is related. However, these 4 projects have already violated the existing allocation policy, so in that regard, they're more or less at your mercy. And if you recall back in February, we had told them either to pay up or we were going to recapture their allocation. We've since renegotiated with 4 of them. One of these projects wanted their deposit back. There were 6 to begin with. One of them wanted their deposit back. The second one paid up front, as we requested. The other 4 asked for other considerations. So what we, as staff, agreed to present to you was that the deposit that they have already submitted becomes non-refundable. They have to bring the allocation up to today's rates with an additional deposit, which is also non-refundable. They have 12 months, because most of these projects obviously have been going on for a while. They have 12 months to initiate construction. If they don't initiate construction in 12 months, they have to place another 10% non-refundable deposit, and then it gives them another 24 months to begin construction.
Okay, so before we go too much further on that, so we are, and what you're referring to is the 4 projects on this piece of paper: Mears Point Marina, Perry's Retreat, Chester Haven Beach, and the Enclave, correct?
That is correct.
So right now, all 4 of those, at the time that they were issued allocation, had a 10% deposit that was made.
Correct.
That deposit is now non-refundable, and they have to bring it up to today's value?
Correct.
Is that correct? So they're not going to 20%, they're still at 10%, but at today's value?
Correct.
Has
Okay.
any of them done that yet?
They're all willing to do that, yes.
Right.
I'm sorry?
They're all willing to do that. That's why we have public works agreements here.
We
for
haven't,
them.
we haven't voted. So And then after that, they have how long before they owe you yet another 10%?
12 months.
12 months, okay. And that's what this is all about right here in this paper?
That's correct.
Okay.
So my question to Mike while you're here is, where are those projects in the hopper?
That was the $64,000 question.
Oh, I mean, are we going to collect again, or do you continue to have the allocation sitting out there?
In varying degrees of.
It will only sit out there for so long, and then we'll get it back.
Okay, so when is the final callback? This doesn't really say, what is the final callback after that second 12 months?
3 years. So
36 months from when
right.
we sign this tonight, they build.
They're either under construction or you can recapture it. And both deposits are non-refundable.
That is plenty of time. I mean,
Oh, I don't
Which is
doubt
plenty
it's
of
plenty
time.
of time. I'm just trying to get to your temperature on where you think they're going to be 3 years from
You say
now.
that how far under construction they have to be within that 36?
Permitted, I believe, is all it requires, right?
But all three of them are residential, so I would say they certainly have to be issued building permits and, be pretending to be under construction.
But do we have something that tells them, is there any ambiguity for them that they're going to say?
What's the definition of under construction?
Right.
Does zoning have a definition of under construction?
I thought it was permitted is the way it
it
read,
needs
right?
to be permitted.
Right.
Right,
Because your permit's only for your permit's
6
not
months, right.
open-ended.
right.
Right. Well, you can continue to re-up the permit once you have it, so.
Well, I'm just trying to figure what's the loophole that someone might try to
Right.
look for,
Permitted.
and how can
You could permit one lot and continue to permit, and you would basically be under construction by definition.
All right, so back to your original question. Mike, do you mind telling us where, starting with Mears Point Marina, where these projects are as far as their purview in front of you?
Sure. Mears Point is still looking for a partner to come in and move that project forward. They have final approval. They just are having difficulty getting a partner that is in that residential marina market that can assist them in moving that project forward. I received a call just last week. Somebody's putting a package together for like the third or fourth time. We'll see if that comes in. So.
Okay.
Perry's Retreat is very active. They've been to one stack. They have a second stack scheduled. I fully expect that to move forward.
Okay.
Chesterhaven Beach, Lord knows.
It'll
That's
probably-
been around since Steve was here, and I've been here 5 years.
It's going to be a comp plan issue.
So that will most likely be a comp plan issue. And the Enclave is also making strides to move forward. So really, if I may be frank, the one that looks like it would have difficulty moving forward is the Chesterhaven Beach. I think the other ones pretty much have a good shot of moving forward, but I don't know where Chesterhaven Beach is.
And
What's the allocation?
help me again,
36,000.
How much?
help me again,
36,000?
the three excluding Chesterfield Beach, that in your opinion, your expert opinion, that they'll be ready to go inside 12 months.
12 months, probably not 12 months, but more like 36 months, I think, is a more appropriate window. Mears has had their approval for 12 months, and they are struggling finding a developer to assist them. The other two are moving forward. I would say clearly 12 months
Okay.
is within that realm.
Okay.
So the outliers are Mears Point and Chesterhaven Beach.
The two larger of the projects.
Okay.
I mean, we didn't compel them to enter into these agreements. We would have given their money back. I mean,
Right.
so
I
this is their
understand.
decision.
I just want to, for the record, I just want to make sure that there's a clear understanding of, and I understand it's all driven by the allocation or the lack of allocation and the unfairness of them sitting on it for
Right.
years when you've got projects that are ready to move forward.
I think this is a wonderful incentive, quite frankly. It makes them focused either let's go or you'll lose it. And I think this is a wonderful incentive to either move forward or not.
It actually has worked.
Seems to have.
It seems to have worked for these four that are, actually the six, because two have already
Right.
made it clear. Okay. Thank you.
So the motion that we need for this
I'm gonna
one is on page 23, which is,
Yeah.
right, we don't need, the Public Works Agreement, the Mayor's Associates and the other ones, we don't need to read these motions.
Right, I'm going to move to execute, we're not going to do the PWAs, you said?
No, the one you're reading is, it covers all of them at the same time, I would imagine. I don't know why we have
Motion,
one.
not four separate motions.
Correct.
You want one motion, right, okay. So I move to execute the 4 public works agreements with Mears Point Marina Apartments, Perry's Retreat Subdivision, Chester Haven Beach Subdivision, and the Enclave Subdivision as presented, which will allow each project to retain their allocation commitment in return for the provisions listed within the public works agreement which have been discussed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The only thing I want to add to that is the reason we have this in the specific ones, because they already have a public works agreement. So this is amending all of these public work agreements.
They already had their allocation granted, they had never executed it, and they have never executed a public works agreement.
Okay, but that will now be put in, this portion will be put into that for
Yep.
them to sign.
Right.
But this starts the clock ticking on the.
Correct.
That is
Right,
correct.
and then they'll have to come up with the other deposit.
Right.
To keep, yeah, so.
Okay, so seeing no other further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mr.
So
Quibby,
moved.
thank you.
Well, thank you.
I appreciate your clarification.
One other item is not on the agenda. As you know, on July 2nd, we received bids to construct a water main from Dundee Avenue to Kent Narrows before we realized the impacts of the bridge decking. That is about to start in another week or so. The contractor and SHA have suggested that we institute a detour for eastbound on 18 to go down Shamrock Road to get to 50. And I personally think that would enhance the traffic flow as opposed to having a normal flagging operation with two-way traffic.
I agree.
So with your permission, we'll let State Highway, they need their permission to detour on a county road. So the detour would be on Shamrock to Route 50. There's only,
Don't be so quick.
State wants our permission
No,
now?
Get the bargaining chip in.
well, no, the point is, this project's going to start mid-September here?
and as far as this detour, it'll be over mid-November.
Yeah, so the mid-September start date is really 1 week before they close that lane on the bridge. So, you know, my first concern was the backup that would happen if they're flagging, stopping, one side goes, stop, the other side goes, without continuous movement. So right now, you'll be able to, even though the water line is going on the the eastbound lane,
Westbound.
yeah. So we're still going to be westbound traffic will still travel through there. We're just going to detour the eastbound side.
Yes, but I mean, it won't be unimpeded. It will be impeded in both directions, but it will flow much better than a normal flagging operation.
Right. Okay, yep.
Yeah, so we have a press release ready to go out. on that-
I read
on
it.
that matter. Good.
Really explains it well.
Yep. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. All right, Commissioners, we move to our action items. If you want to flip over to tab 3, page 1, item 1. First item is a letter drafted by Patrick Thompson to respond to a notice of appeal that was filed by Mr. Platt. And this is a very old complaint involving a building permit violation that was previously resolved in court. Mr. Platt has incorrectly filed a Board of Appeals application with the Commissioner's Office. So we had Patrick draft this letter to instruct Mr. Platt of the proper protocol for your consideration and signatures.
Motion to sign the letter?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. Okay, item 2 on page 10 is tax increment financing for the Kent Narrows Development District, and John Seaman is here, and he's got a few folks with him as well to answer any questions about this TIF for the Kent Narrows. So John, if you want to come up and introduce your folks, and
Need a motion first?
yeah, we can take a motion if you like. Yeah.
All right, I move to approve Resolution 19-33 to establish the Kent Narrows Tax Increment Financing Development District.
Second. For discussion.
You have, this is Julie. Julie is with Municap, who is our consultant on the TIF project for the last several years. You have Bill Henn and Damian Mark, who are our bond counsel, and we're responsible for drafting the resolution that you have before you. This resolution establishes a tax increment financing district, the Kent Narrows Development District. It establishes the boundaries for the district and sets up a special fund to deposit the incremental property tax revenues. So essentially what the action today would establish a baseline for the parcels that are within the district so that we'd have an established assessable base and any assessment increases beyond that baseline would go into this special fund. And so those tax increment revenues would be established to provide for improvements in the Kent Narrows. The intent was to, there is a list of improvements that we'd established, which per the resolution amount to, we're saying not to exceed $14 million, but they're essentially water sewer improvements in the Kent Narrows area. They were intended to serve major developments in that area. When we put this together, there was the Douglas development, the Mears Point development, and then the Fisherman's Village and the other part of the Botel. So those are the projects which it essentially would be contributing to the basis for this is that to the extent you have these projects in that area, the assessments are going to go up, and so that incremental assessment is what goes into the fund, which usually is used to pay debt service. So what you do is you have these improvements worth, maybe let's say $10 million, and so that revenue that goes into the fund would pay the debt service on those projects. We've had some issues in terms of some of these projects. We've had a number of discussions with the developers. UNICAP has also had discussions with the developers. They're not all, moving forward at this time, but I think the intent was to, establish that baseline so that, we have that set so that any assessment increases that do take place as a result of, sort of normal increases or as a result of these projects, we'd have that money available to be used for infrastructure improvements, which would service those projects that are going forward. It's important to recognize that this is tax money. This is not a tax increase to anyone. As your assessments go up, you're going to pay more taxes. If there was not a TIF, those taxes would go to the county's general fund. In this case, we're saying this is a priority of the county as a matter of policy to support development in Kent Narrows, and so those tax revenues go to support that development, but there's no tax increase involved. So that's what we have set up here, and we are asking for you to approve the resolution. And that would establish the TIF. It has the boundaries. You can see the map and the parcels. It's essentially the same as the Kent Narrows Special District, which we already have. So that district, which has a 6-cent tax assessed in that area, which now, provides about $35,000 a year. And so this district is almost exactly the same as that special district.
Okay.
What's different about it? You said it's almost exactly the same. Is there any key components of the key properties that aren't really in it?
There's one or two
I wanna
projects.
say that there's sort of a marina area that was excluded or included. There was a couple of parcels that were excluded.
The county parcel, no, that's,
Yeah. Some non-taxable parcels were excluded.
right.
Yeah,
So the
right.
boardwalk, next to the jetty, the open space area, so it's on the map. Okay, so, but those would be properties that either the county owns or property that cannot be developed.
Correct.
Is what I'm assuming there.
Right.
So we enact this, we decide in 3 years that, we can't get these developments to come online, so we're not going to go out and borrow the money for the TIF. What happens next?
Well, there is a provision in the resolution, because I asked that question specifically, we could move that money back to the general fund.
So it doesn't take another or it doesn't take a...
No, the resolution provides that the money could be used for, I think, any legal...
So long as there are no bonds outstanding,
Okay.
you have to do it via ordinance. So you have to do an ordinance to...
Okay.
move the money back.
And we could use that ordinance at any time. We could use it next year if we wanted to, and take whatever money was there and
Correct.
go do a playground in Centerville.
Correct.
So, I mean, there's no limitations or restraints on the money once it's put into that account and are using it. It just takes, like you said, an ordinance to move it, which
Yeah, as
we're
long as
hoping.
there's no debt tied to it.
Right, okay.
And the other, let me just make one other point about when we developed this and we set the aggregate amount of the principal at $14 million, which I think is probably unlikely at this point in light of the Douglas development. And so I think you're suggesting that we do an amendment or amend the resolution?
When we were drafting, we determined let's make a tax election to preserve your right to reimburse yourself with bond proceeds for expenditures you might have paid in advance along the way. We learned recently that the project list isn't as concrete as we thought it was.
Correct.
And the amount isn't. So we tried to kill two birds with one stone and put your tax election in there. But I think it turns out now that because it's just not stable enough to determine what the improvements are and what the amount is, recommend that we just strike section 12, which is the tax election, along with the exhibit that lists the improvements, and that we can just make the tax election down the road at a later date when the project
So we could do that at any given time.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. We're trying to be practical and get it done in one shot here
Right.
rather than two, but since things have changed a little
So
bit.
we're going to remove that altogether, the dollar amounts that we were originally talking about.
Yep.
Leave it blank, establish the district, the baseline, start collecting the money, and then in 2 years from now, we could come back and say, okay, we found another developer, this is going to move forward, now we're going to go after that money, and we'll just add it at that time.
That's correct.
That's right.
Okay, so I mean, that seems.
Can you reestablish, say Mears Point and the others came online, Botel, and say the Fisherman's Village all came on, and the other one still stayed stagnant, we could still issue the bonds up to that point to cover.
Up to the dollar amount that
Those are covered
yes.
under those projects, right?
Yeah, and it's just a tax election, so down the road, if things even change before the bond issue, we could always come back. It's just, your ability to reimburse yourself is based on the tax election. So, if there isn't anything to be reimbursed, then you're totally fine.
Gotcha,
So it's-
we're fine there.
Yeah.
Let me ask a question. This diverts money from the general fund, correct?
Yes.
The future increases.
Yeah, right.
Correct.
What
Yes.
would you anticipate that would be? And just so that I'd have some sense of.
Well, if all three of these projects had gone forward.
Jonathan, I would do it just as what's going on now.
But it's sitting there.
Well,
What's
what's there now, you're talking about less than $400,000 a year. So the Fisherman's Village and the.
No, that's the baseline, 400,000.
Hotel would start off, so the incremental value, and it would start off slowly. I mean, in the first year, it would probably be $50,000. Maybe after 3 years, based on the model, it might be $250,000, $300,000 that would be diverted.
Yeah.
But if it sits like it is now, Steve, I think I see what you're looking at is what is the hit next year at 1.5% on the assessed value? So it's very little on $300,000. Right. Yeah,
We have
it's
some
minuscule.
information that
Right.
makes it a lot less likely this TIF is going to work.
Mhm.
If it sits where it's at, it's minuscule.
Right.
It really is.
But if over 5 years it gathers enough to
Right,
replace
no,
a
that's-
water line or something
Exactly.
in there,
It's there,
I
the
think
money's
it's-
there.
right.
Or to
So-
leverage the money with MDE if necessary or whatever, so.
yeah. And we've come this far, and I'd hate to see, keep rowing.
And KNDF is good?
I don't know that it doesn't really affect them. I mean, their
They're
taxes
happy.
are their taxes, so this is, we're not hitting them with
But
the additional tax. It doesn't.
They're happy.
Well, I mean-
They want to see, the infrastructure improved.
I mean, I started this with Jody over 4 years ago. So we took that ride and, up to Keenan's office. So, I mean, this has just been a long battle, and it's unfortunate that 2 of these projects have fallen through the floor, but, we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, so.
So you just said that you already spoke to KNDF and.
Talked to Gigi today, heard from Gigi today, yeah. She was just happy that we were finally going to establish the district.
Establishing the district's totally different than whatever,
Tax.
right, and doing the tax and the bond, asking the money. So
Right.
I think this is I'm fine with this, so.
Ready to vote?
Ready to vote? Any other discussion? Okay, well, let's see here. Let's see, where are we here? I move to approve Resolution 19-33 to establish the Kent Narrows Tax Increment Financing Development District. We have, that's what we're voting on, so all those in favor signify by saying aye.
With some amendments, right?
Excuse me?
With the
Oh,
amendment,
with-
strike
I'm
number
sorry.
12.
With
Yes.
amendment.
So do we?
Strike what?
Strike section 12, is that
Strike
what
section 12.
But we need the amendment first.
I'd like, make a motion to amend it and striking section 12 and the
Related exhibit.
related exhibit.
Second?
So we have a motion and a section, and a second to strike section 12 and
Related exhibit.
the related exhibit. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So moved. What do you?
No, yeah, a weak yes.
Okay, we guess. On the motion, though.
He doesn't wanna raise his hand for it.
All right, so now we're moving to
Motion to
approve
approve.
Resolution 19-33 to establish the Kent Narrows Tax Increment Financing Development District as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You good there, Steve?
Yeah, no, it was a
He had a weak finger.
Yeah,
Two weak yeses, but it's
two
5-0.
weak yeses, but it's 5-0.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All
Thank you
right.
for the time
Thank you.
and traveling down. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, we have, next we have item 3 on page 30, and this is a termination of open space agreement in the town of Sutlersville for Lot 13 of the Coleman Farm. And this essentially is an instrument that was prepared to formally terminate an open space easement originally created on a 96-acre property known as Lot 13 of the Coleman Farm in the town of Sutlersville. Property is currently owned by Sutlersville Town Center, LLC. The Gray developers, Calgary III, and this property has been annexed into the town, which effectively releases that agreement. This kind of cleans up the land records. This is a property that was originally used for a small subdivision and also the Foxtown Senior Center. So,
I move to approve termination of open space easement for the 96-acre property known as Lot 13 of the Coleman Farm in the town of Sutlersville.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. Thank you. You're welcome.
Hey,
And there you go. That's good. Thanks, Jeff.
okay, next is item 4 on page 36, the FY 2020 Department of Parks and Recreation fireworks contract. Can I get a motion on
Move
that?
to authorize the Department of Parks and Recs to execute the fireworks contract with Zambelli Incorporated for the July 2020 fireworks celebration to be held on Wednesday, July 1, 2020, with a rain date of Thursday, July 2, 2020.
I'll start with the easy question first.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Second?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, we have a motion and a second. Okay, discussion. The dates, did you run this through with the,
Yes, sir.
and they're good with the dates?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
All approved.
Now, the second question, is this a different company than last year?
Yes, sir.
You're 2 for 2.
I'm 2 for 2. I'm
You're
happy.
happy now.
I'm happy. Okay, anybody else?
So when does the determination of where they're going to be launched from have to be?
Currently, I am working with the company that we have recommended, and she has been on site, so we are going to move forward with the same venue for now,
North of the Kent Narrows.
north of the Kent Narrows.
Are we gonna get a bang for our buck?
What about, you've
I'd
been
say
waiting a year to
Steve
say
or
that.
I have not let you down.
Why don't you
Okay.
tell us
I
about,
got you.
All right.
I got
this
you.
is a pretty good company, so can you tell us a little bit about
Sure.
Zambelli's, maybe?
Well, let me go back a little bit. For the past 7 years, we have used a company and we have not, been very satisfied. So this year, I have researched and we're going to go with Zambelli's favorite fireworks. And they have been in existence for over 100 years. They come highly recommended by many. I immediately got on the phone as I was asked to, and working very diligently with Kim, and she has locked us in. So I do need this approval today.
So,
because they are in high demand.
Sure. So do you have a resume for them, like shows that perhaps maybe we would be familiar with?
It's right here, if you'd like to take this, or I
Or
can.
just share with us, just a couple, just for the TV audience.
What do you mean?
Shows that they've done.
Oh, they
Venues
have
that
done,
they've-
okay, they have done Sutlersville, Sutlersville, the town of Sutlersville, Rock Hall, and I will tell you that I did speak to the individuals in Rock Hall, and in Rock Hall, they actually have people that come in and spend the weekend and the day. This is a very big event for them. So the other in here, I think, they've done the Kentucky Derby Festival. They have done the Thunder over Louisville. So they really do come very highly recommended.
What's the cost of this?
I have not negotiated that yet.
But you don't have a range?
We don't have an
What did we
exact
spend
price
last year?
I think we spent about 25. Where's Jonathan? You left? Jonathan can
Okay,
tell
no,
me.
that's fine.
Jonathan coded all the bills last year.
Okay. Yeah, good. Well, I'm happy to see a change.
I will say this, that they did not want to share with me what Rock Hall paid for their fireworks, but she gave me a ballpark figure, and I think we are very close to
Jack,
what
we
we
know the
paid
mayor
last
of Rock Hall, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Maybe we'll just
Very
make a
well.
call. We'll find out for you.
Okay, thank you.
We'll do the comparison shop.
There you go. Absolutely. Great, thank you. Okay, so any other discussion? We're moving to authorize the Department of Parks and Recreation to execute the fireworks contract with Zambelli Incorporated for the July 2020 fireworks celebration to be held on Wednesday, July 1st, 2020, with a rain date of Thursday, July 2nd, 2020. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan.
Go get 'em. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Steve. All right.
Steve, thanks for not asking for a truck this time.
That's what I thought it said Zamboni. I'm going, we got an ice rink? I'm like, whoa.
He hasn't left yet either.
Never know.
Okay, item 5 on page 37 is a procurement consideration request from the Health Department, Dr. Ciatola, to provide Midshore Community Foundation with funds totaling $26,959 to be used for the Queen Anne's County Goes Purple and the Haunted Trap House for the purchases of outreach materials, education materials, and advertising expenses.
I move to authorize the Health Department to provide Midshore Community Foundation with funds totaling $26,959 to be used for the Queen Anne's County Goes Purple and the Haunted Trap House for the purchase of outreach materials, education materials for advertising expenses to support these two campaigns.
Second.
Jim, do you know if some of this funding that we're seeing here, some of that the Board of Ed, is this part of that federal dollars that was handed down?
This is not, but the
Some of the
Board of
other was.
Ed got, I think their grant, how much, Linda, do you know how much the Board of Ed got? 140,000? Yeah, they got 140,000 for awareness, education. There's a lot of things that one will cover. So,
But is that part of that federal money that got shifted down for this stuff? Do you know? I mean, I'm just curious because
I don't know if the grant came from the feds or excuse me? No, this isn't. No, this isn't. This isn't federal.
I'm just curious because there was a big pot of money there, and I'm just wondering how much of it we're actually applying for because we can
Well,
also
that
get
might have been the 140 from,
They would have come from the state. The money came down from the feds to the state as a part of opioid awareness. It was, it's like, I think it's $10 million for 3 years, so it's a $30 million total that's going to get distributed out via grant. So, but you got to apply, and a lot of people don't even know it existed. So there's.
I think that's the money that Steve Shue is the director, and he's
Yes,
right.
right. So do you know
But
if
I
we've
don't
got?
think, that's not where you're.
So you didn't get that from there?
Right.
So have we applied, I guess my question is, have we gone after any of that money to see what we can get from there?
Short answer is going to be, I don't know.
Okay.
I honestly don't know. I know what you're talking about, but I think there was certain benchmarks that you had to meet for that one, so I don't have an answer for that one.
Okay.
This one is totally separate.
Got it.
So, any other discussion? I'm not going to read the fine job that Mr. Dumanel did, but with that being said, we're voting for to authorize the $26,959 to be used by the Haunted Trap House, the Drug Free Coalition, and go to Midshore counties. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. There we go.
Thank you, Commissioners. Item 6 on page 38 is a Reappointment on the Community Partnerships for Children and Families Board. We had a resignation from Reverend Anna Fox, and they'd like to reappoint Reverend Elmer Davis to the board. Can I get a motion for that?
I move to accept the resignation of Reverend Anna Fox and appoint Reverend Elmer Davis to the Board of Queen Anne's County Community Partnerships for Children and Families to serve the remainder of her term ending on June 30th, 2022.
Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Wasn't he the one that did the invocation the other night?
I think so.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. Our final item, item 7 on page 39, is a property lien for resolution for nuisance violation. Resolution 1902. Can I get a motion on that, please?
I move to approve Resolution 19-02 to place a lien on each of the properties listed in the County Zoning Administrator's Memorandum dated September 10th, 2019 for nuisance violations.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Can we get color photographs of these?
I knew that was
I'm more concerned that it's whether it's mine or not. That's why I was
Always read the address first.
Make sure the address is not yours.
all right.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Seeing
You
there's
have a motion, you have a
seeing there's
second.
no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. Boom.
All right.
Keep
Maybe
going.
for another month.
Ready?
Where are we at?
We're ready for presentations. So if you want to turn to tab 6, we have the Animal Welfare League up next. And I believe Ramon Ville is here to make a presentation. All right, Ramon, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
All right.
How are you? Thank you for having me here today. My name is Ramon Villatoro, and I am the director at the Animal Welfare League of Queen Anne's County. Today we will be reviewing statistics from the first 9 months of 2019. We'll go over shelter highlights and goals moving forward. For intakes, we took in 620 felines, 267 canines, and 47 other animals, which consist of small companions, reptiles, and farm animals. 54% of our intakes come from stray animals, and 50% of our stray intakes come from animal control impounds. This is a year comparison with the first 9 months of 2018 and the first 9 months of 2019. We experienced a 40% increase from 2018 in intakes. A large volume of our intakes come from felines, where there is a 50% increase from the previous year. The volume of intakes during the summer months is usually associated with the kitten season. However, we have seen a large number of feral cats and kittens enter our shelter this previous season. I believe that this is due to not having an appropriate plan in addressing the feral population in Queen Anne's County. We will continue to increase in intakes year by year if we do not focus our efforts in addressing the overpopulation issue in Queen Anne's County. Next, we will review the outcome disposition of our animals. In the first 9 months of 2019, the interesting thing is how our intake and outcome percentages are identical. We took in 934 animals, and we took out 930 animals.
So that's adopted out and or otherwise?
Yes, and in the next slide, I'll break down. So our open adoption practices is a large part of our adoption rate success. We focus on removing self-imposed barriers and set up our adopters for success. We have been able to successfully reunite 123 animals with their families. Earlier this year, our staff had the privilege of witnessing a beautiful reunion. Blue had been missing for 6 months and had traveled 130 miles away from his home. A Good Samaritan brought Blue to our shelter where he was scanned, and luckily his microchip led to his safe reunion with his family. Another part of our life-saving efforts includes establishing relationships and partnerships with other animal shelters and rescues. With our partnerships, we have placed 255 animals in other organizations. One of these partnerships include the Humane Society of Carroll County. We have scheduled a biweekly transfer that has allowed us to maintain a comfortable capacity this past kitten season. Currently in the shelter, we have 72 animals in our care. And this is large to do with how often we're adopting and placing animals in other rescue partnerships. At AWL, we do not believe in euthanizing for space or time. However, we are an open admissions facility. So we take in animals with medical conditions or behavioral issues. Our commitment to every animal that comes through our shelter is to give them the best opportunity through medical treatment, enrichment, and quality care.
Can I interrupt
Yes.
you? Sir, so you only have 72 counts, dogs and felines? How'd you get the felines down so low?
Adoptions.
Was it or transfer into other counties?
It's adoptions, transfers, so a combination of both.
Because you were at 200 a while ago.
Yeah, during the start of the season, around spring, we were at the max. We were at around 150. Yeah. So we've been focusing a lot of adoption promotions and kind of reducing the capacity.
Oh, well done.
So we have increased all live outcome dispositions. Our adoptions have increased by 24%. Our reuniting efforts have increased by 95%. Our transferring to other shelters have increased by 304%. Our euthanasia has unfortunately increased by 169%. Our in-shelter deaths have decreased by 70%, and this is all possible through our medical procedures in place. Even with our increase in animal intakes, we have been able to improve from the previous year. To be considered a no-kill facility, an animal shelter must have a live release number higher than 90%. We currently have a 92% live release rate. Vaccinations are a fundamental component of maintaining high standards. At AWL, we have tailored our vaccination protocol to better protect the influx of kittens we've received this kitten season. Go ahead.
I got to ask you what the other, you have two under other.
Oh, ferrets.
Ah, okay.
Ferrets for the rabies vaccines, yeah.
Bears?
No,
Ferrets.
ferrets.
Ferrets. Bears.
Now you know what a cat's was.
That's one of the farm animals.
So kittens receive a vaccination as early as 4 weeks, and they receive booster vaccinations every 2 weeks until the age of 4 months. We do this in order to better protect them against all the common shelter diseases.
Are you doing that in-house or you?
In-house.
So you have somebody that's licensed?
Our entire animal care staff.
Excellent.
Yeah. So this allows us to protect against common shelter diseases like Coleman virus and Panleukopenia virus. Our shelter veterinarian, Dr. Caitlin Neal, is an integral part of our AWL's success. Dr. Neal performs surgeries on Tuesdays. She has performed 504 surgeries to date. She does not only perform spay-neuter procedures, she also performs dentals, tooth extractions, amputations, mass removals, among other procedures. Dr. Neal oversees all medical care and treatment of our shelter animals. Volunteers help us in all areas, assisting our animal care technicians in cleaning, working at the front desk, or being out in the community during events. We have a young and thriving program. We're going to focus our efforts on recruitment and ways to improve our current program. We see numerous orphan neonatal kittens who require around-the-clock care to survive. Our dedicated foster parents step in and provide excellent care. We provide the foster parents with all the supplies they need to succeed. We have expanded our dog fostering by starting the Day Explorer program. This is designed for folks who want to give our dogs a quick break from the kennels by going for a quick ride to the store, getting some ice cream, going to the beach, and we've seen tremendous success with the program in reducing stress within our dogs. We want to continue to grow the foster base and expand on this program. I wanted to find ways to provide a service that would be beneficial to our community. We have a low-cost rabies and microchip clinic. So far, we have administered 175 rabies vaccinations and 30 microchips. We have already started to see the benefit of offering a low-cost microchip by reuniting animals who've come into our shelter as strays. Looking forward, we would like to find ways to host clinics in different areas in the community. We want to focus on areas where the majority of stray animals are found. And we also want to incorporate distemper vaccines, Bordetella vaccines, blood tests, and nail trims in future clinics.
Have you thought about doing nail trimming?
The what?
Nail trimming?
Yes.
That is the hardest thing to get.
Yes.
I mean, you know, I can wash the dogs, but I don't trim the nails. So.
Yeah, so we want to incorporate and add more services.
Excellent.
So moving on to organizational highlights. When I was initially approached in joining AWL, I knew it would be a challenge. My first tour, I saw many sick cats who were not being treated appropriately, cats with zoonotic diseases in general housing areas, staff mixing bleach with other cleaners, among other shocking practices. Over the next few slides, I'll review how far we've come since then. I've restructured our staffing to provide more efficiency in each department. We have a total of 16 employees. Our dedicated and passionate board of directors have been there to support and guide us this previous year. Our sanitation procedures have been revamped to include the best practices. Rescue is an accelerated hydrogen peroxide cleaner. It is considered the gold standard among shelters for sanitation. It is the most reliable against the common shelter diseases. The only downside is the cost of the product. However, in the long run, reduced illness spread and outbreaks offset the price. My first week, I was able to rehire Dr. Caitlin Neal and her vet assistant, Megan O'Donnell. I revised all operating procedures for animals coming into the shelter, one of those being vaccinating on arrival, an appropriate flow chart for new animals, and outbreak procedures. This year, we've had multiple Panleukopenia virus kittens come into our shelter. Panleukopenia is a highly infectious virus that can be devastating if not properly controlled. Thanks to our dedicated staff, we were able to contain the virus and not spread it into our shelter. Enrichment is just as important as sanitation and medical care. We have increased our efforts in ensuring our animals remain mentally healthy. Our mission would not be possible without the support from the community. Our goal for the coming months is to expand our community-focused programs by offering medical care to underprivileged communities. The AWL team is committed in remaining connected with the county through social media. We have reached over 500,000 people with our engaging content. Social media has allowed us to share with the community all the great programs we are working on and to showcase our adoptable animals. Looking ahead, we have many exciting plans in the works. To start, our current floors are porous and make it difficult to properly sanitize. We are installing new epoxy flooring this fall to improve sanitation and to become compliant with the Department of Agriculture. The Association of Shelter Veterinarian Guidelines states, poor cat housing is one of the greatest shortcomings observed in shelters and has a substantially negative impact on both health and mental well-being. Our current housing does not meet the minimum standards for our cats and is a primary focus for the coming year. Looking ahead to address the cat overpopulation in our community, we must provide our ordinances to be in favor of TNR. TNR is a humane approach in controlling the population in Queen Anne's County. This will greatly reduce the number of kittens during the coming kitten seasons. We began construction earlier this year on our outdoor catio. This will provide space for our shelter cats to exercise and to enrich their lives during their stay with us. We have minor improvements to make before officially opening the room up to our cats. Thank you for your continuing support. Any questions?
Well, I'd like to remark that this department can often be a prickly and difficult department, and since you got there, it hasn't been. And you have my and I think our highest compliments for its.
Nothing but kudos
I
I've
don't
heard.
think we've had a
Thank you.
single issue since you got here, so well done.
That's right.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Good
Well
report.
done.
Yeah. Thank you.
And anything on the cat end that, do you think that we may have to put into effect to help you next year? That's a lot of cats to take in and out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, definitely. Currently, we're working with animal control to see if we can find common ground in establishing something that we can all agree on.
Where are they, most of them coming from? Is there established colonies that you're finding them in, or is it typically neighborhoods? I mean,
Yes, the 3 highest intake areas are going to be North County, Sutlersville, Millington's a big one. Graysonville is the 3rd highest one.
Thanks, Jack.
Yep, Jack's district, that's what we thought.
They're all mine. They're mine. All right. Well, yeah. So anything? Well, just let me know if there's anything I can help you do up there.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for a good report. Okay, next up we have item 2 on page 26, our friends from the Compass Regional Hospice update. Lucy coming up too, and Heather, okay, come on up.
Good evening.
She's going to make you go solo?
Right. She said she was having a bad hair day, so sorry.
Well.
Well, thank you, Commissioners, for having me this evening. I want to thank you for your continued support. I just wanted to come out and give you an update on the happenings of Compass Regional Hospice. You all have been great support over the years, and we have grown significantly as a nonprofit, not only in Queen Anne's County, but also now Caroline and Kent County. So we're privileged to continue to serve the terminally ill and people with serious illness in our counties, as well as providing grief services to anyone who is in need free of charge. That is the opioid overdose victims' families, suicides, car accidents, and natural deaths, of course. So we're available to all the school systems with free counseling to children so they don't have to leave their school environment to feel like they are not normal and going to a counselor's office. So we have been doing a lot of work with the counties, collaborating to provide services that we know are lacking in the communities, but not asking for additional funds for that, but fundraising for that because of our generous donations from our county residents. I want to also thank you for the ability to be able to utilize David. David is the person who obviously did the courthouse here for you all, Sadiq, and the county was generous, and thank you again for allowing him to help us oversee our project at our facility here in Centerville. Without him, we would be on our own and not that we don't trust our contractor, it's Harper and Son, or our architects, but it is nice to have somebody else with that skill set to be able to question everything as you're going through the project. So it's greatly appreciated and has obviously saved our organization some funds not to have to hire that person. I also want to thank Todd and Margie because they came out not long ago and toured our facility and got to know a little bit more about our organization. So thank you both. I also wanted to update you that we currently are the largest nonprofit in Queen Anne's County. We received an economic development incentive grant over 3 years ago now to help us purchase our office building here in Centerville. And we satisfied every one of the criteria over the 3 years, not only satisfied, but way over and beyond as far as the amount of employees that we have employed over the years. So we now have over 100 employees that serve our community, and our annual budget is now $7.6 million, which we have to fundraise 1/3 of that annual budget every year to be able to continue to provide the services that we do. So again, thank you for your support and for our community's support. Just a little update on the capital campaign. We have broken ground on the building. It's going to take approximately about 1 more year to complete. We currently have 6 beds here in Centerville for patients that cannot stay at home to be cared for under hospice services, and we are extending that by an additional 4 beds, so it'll be a total of a 10-bed facility. We're also doing a commercial kitchen, which we did not have before, a better entrance because everybody was always very confused. If you've been to our building, which most of you have, there's a lot of smaller doors, and there wasn't like one entrance that was inviting to people, and they knew how to get into our building. And then some additional parking, which we never had enough parking for families and other guests. and then some groundwork so that people can have more private, peaceful space outside of the walls of the facility when they need to get away to reflect. And we have, for our capital campaign, we have about $750,000 more to raise. We have raised over $2.4 million at this point in time. We were lucky enough through the Governor Hogan's budget, they granted us $1 million. So that helped a long way. So we're looking forward to completing our capital campaign and completing our project and being able to serve more people in our county. Do you all have any additional questions?
No, I guess not. That pretty much covers it.
$2.5 million you guys have to fundraise annually, roughly?
Yep.
And so share with us, how do you do that?
We do it through special events. We also get memorial donations. In somebody's obituary, they'll say, in lieu of flowers, leave donations to Compass Regional Hospice or another charity of their choice. We get a significant amount of money from that annually. We also do 2 appeal letters to the community annually, appealing to help us to raise enough funds. We tell our story or a specific story to hopefully have people want to give to our organization. So special events, the appeals, and our state treasurer's resale shop, which is in Kent Town Market on Kent Island, and that is run by 100% volunteers, and that brings in hundreds of thousands of dollars a year after expenses. And then grants.
Very good.
Yeah. And it's hard when you're trying to raise money for a capital campaign and also operating money, because there's only so many people that you can hit. So, thank you.
Really well done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have
Thanks
a good
very much.
evening.
We'll look forward to the ribbon cutting ceremony next
Yes.
year sometime for the
You'll get the
expansion.
invite.
Okay, great. Thank you both. Okay, our next presentation, Commissioners, is on page 29, item 3, and this is Mr. Michael Bell, Supervision of Instruction for Every Student Succeeds, and their strategic plan. And he's got an entourage here from our Board of Education, Dr. Kane.
We travel as a
So
team.
come on up. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So good afternoon, good evening, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Andrea Kane, Superintendent for Queen Anne's County Public Schools. I have my team with me. Of course, you know Gregory Paluski, who is our Deputy Superintendent. Michael Bell is our Supervisor for Media, World Classical Languages, Visual Performing Arts, and this is part of his other duties as assigned. And then we also have John Pfister, who is our CFO. I'd like to acknowledge Captain Beverly Kelly, who is with us, our Board President, and Betsy Andrews also, who is the Executive Administrative Assistant to Mr. Paluski. So this evening, we're going to share with you our local ESSA Consolidated Strategic Plan. I'd like to just let you know that the name of this plan is different from what you're used to hearing from us. We usually present to you the Bridge to Excellence Plan. This is related. It still sets out a strategic plan for how we're going to achieve our goals, but the name has changed, and Mr. Bell is going to explain to you how that happened and what it really contains. We're going to also share with you sort of an overall, it's a high level, because we don't want to bore you with grand details, but we are going to share with you some of the highlights of our progress for the year, and then we're going to end with some strategies that we're putting in place to continue our progress. Okay?
All right. Good evening, Commissioners. Last year, when shared with you some background about the Bridge to Excellence Master Plan, which is essentially, it's a compliance document for the state, which outlines strategies for improving student achievement and eliminating achievement gaps. This document, it basically shares with the public how each assessment in our district is administered, in addition to how our budget aligns with our goals, objectives, and strategies that are detailed within the plan. Now, as Dr. Kane mentioned, this year the plan has changed, and it's now known as the Local ESSA Consolidated Strategic Plan, which narrows the focus and alignment to accountability, reporting, and student achievement. So here's what's changed. The executive summary, the finance section, and the needs assessment, which is based on last year's data, that all stayed the same, although it was streamlined. The plan now must address disparities in achievement of the following student groups: students requiring special education, students with limited English proficiency, any student group failing to meet or failing to make progress toward meeting state performance standards. And this really speaks to Dr. Kane's equity initiatives, because equity is all over the ESSA Consolidated Strategic Plan. This document also this year includes federal and state grant applications so that you can see what available supports we have. And it also asks us to limit our goals to 3 main areas of focus. So our 3 main areas that were selected include: number 1, academic achievement in reading, English language arts, and math; 2, academic growth in ELA and math, and that also includes its growth over the period of a year, as well as students earn credit for well-rounded curriculum. 3, the last bucket, is school quality and student success, which addresses chronic absenteeism and students that are enrolled in a well-rounded curriculum. And with that, I'd like to turn over the show to Mr. Paluski for some progress highlights from this year.
Good evening. I have certainly the opportunity to share with you some of our progress that we've made over the 2018-2019 school year. I'll hit some of those major highlights. One of those is that our overall scores increased in grades 4, 6, and 8 in English language arts and mathematics. So if you take a look at our cohort group, actually over time, which is a comparison of scores in the same group of students year to year, Queen Anne's County Public Schools saw increases at every grade level in English language arts in elementary and middle school. In English 10, we exceeded the state average by 16%, and currently ranked 6th in the state out of 24 jurisdictions. In the areas of English language arts and literacy, I'm just going to highlight 2 schools in particular among all this data. But one is to highlight Sutlers Elementary School, which saw an increase in their English language arts data by 8.8%. Specifically, students in 4th grade at Sutlersville increased by 25% compared to those scores earned in 3rd grade. Stevensville Middle School increased by 10.1% in English language arts, 6 through 8. Scores on a 6th grade assessment increased by 24 percentage points. So in English 10, our district-wide percentage of students exceeded the state average by 16% and ranked 6th overall in the state, meaning that nearly 77% of our students met the requirement of scale score of 725. In the areas of mathematics, our district-wide percentage of students scoring at a proficiency level of 4 or 5 increased in grades 4, 6, and 8. The percentage of students who met or exceeded the expectation of the 4th grade increased by an overall of 9% from the previous year. And Sutlersville Middle School increased by 18.3% on an 8th grade math assessment. Algebra 1, district-wide, the percentage of students that met or exceeded the state average by 20%, ranking the 6th overall in the state. Lastly is just to highlight, as one of the things that we do naturally is to compare ourselves across the state. As I mentioned, there are 24 jurisdictions in the state of Maryland. There are 9 here on the Eastern Shore. I'll highlight some of those areas. In English language arts, grade 5, Queen Anne's County Public Schools ranked 2nd in the state of Maryland. In grade 6 ELA, currently 1st in the state of Maryland. First there again overall on the Eastern Shore. And mathematics in grade 4, 2nd in the state of Maryland. And you can see by those rankings that you have before you that we rank at a minimum at least 8 out of the 24 jurisdictions in the state or higher, and ranking either the 1st or the 2nd on the 9 Eastern Shore counties. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Kane for some closing remarks.
So, of course, we have to have a plan for how we're going to continue our progress. And some of the things that we do in our district is we really work with our administrators and our teachers on analyzing their student data. And one of the programs we use is called DataWise, the DataWise Improvement Progress. So we'll continue our work with that. We will be implementing, we have an assessment tool that we use to determine where students are and where they're going in terms of their academics. That's called STAR 360, so we'll continue to implement that. We're actually bringing it back this year. We didn't have it last year. We'll continue to examine student work, look at formative assessments, and continue our professional learning for our instructional staff. You've got a whole long list of things that we're going to be doing, but those are just some of the highlights. So with that, we will open it up to any questions that you might have.
Mr. Paluski.
Yes, sir. Mr. Wilson.
I don't want to seem critical. I want to be admiring of all the many excellences and improvements, but as a statistical interest, on page 37 where you have the progress highlights, one curiosity is the way your math numbers between the 4th and 5th grade suddenly nosedive down into the 7th and 8th. What's the story with that? This is not a complaint. This is
sure.
Just
a
remark on.
No. You bring up a very good point.
Yeah.
So just about 2 weeks ago, the state released their state data. So what was embargoed until that point, in which we could share it with the public. So we're currently in the process of looking at all these particular areas, specifically within mathematics, where we've potentially dropped. And that could be for a wide variety of reasons. That could be a professional development potentially concern. It could be a curricular concern. It could be an assessment concern. It could be an intervention concern. It could be a support concern. So we're still analyzing all of this data. In fact, at the October board meeting, we'll be doing a comprehensive analysis, not only on these indicators, but all of our strategic plan indicators. We currently have right around 19 strategic plan indicators that we're going to be reporting out on in a much deeper level. So we're still in that analysis phase of trying to figure out and really pinpoint where there's additional professional development that we need, support that we need. As Dr. Kane mentioned, at the end of the day, there's only one individual that makes the most direct impact on that student, and that's the teacher. The second person is the principal. So those are two key areas of our focus of our professional development, supporting classroom teachers with their work and supporting principals with supporting teachers in doing that work.
Right. Is that, I would say that the most important person is also the parent, and that to leave that out of the equation. And what I'm wondering is this a home originating difficulty, or is this the teacher structure? Is it a curriculum issue? What's your guess?
Well, as you know, it's very complex.
Okay.
And to your point, yes, I would agree that certainly the parent is the number one factor in a child's, both parents. We also have to look at what is it that we have control over. What are the factors that we can control, that we know that we can make an impact.
Very good, sir.
I don't know if anybody else wanted to add.
That was exactly what I was going to say.
So looking at these are based off of the standardized testing.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. So, and I agree with Commissioner Wilson. I see the drastic year over year as you get further along, how the scores do drop. Is that something that has to do with, obviously, the changeover? We're only 4 or 5 years into the Common Core implementation. Is there still some lagging effect or some hangover from that, I guess, maybe because some of these students would have actually been in the 3rd and 4th grade when we made that transition, that maybe these standardized tests aren't really aligned with what the course, how you're getting to the test, I guess is the...
Right, and in general, Maryland has very tight alignment with between our standards and the assessment, the state assessment that we administer. So I don't think that that's necessarily the issue. What we find is different groups, cohorts of students historically perform the same, at the same sort of levels as they progress in grade. So if a group that is a 3rd grade group this year didn't perform as well for the 3rd grade assessment, we find that they tend to not perform as well for the 4th grade assessment. So you'll see some ups and downs, but it's the same groups of students as we progress through school. It's an interesting thing. We are right now still unpacking all of that data. We just, I sat in at the State Department meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they were just sharing sharing the day that the data was unembargoed, it was released. And it is a similar situation across the state in terms of the math scores and where they increase and where they decrease, that algebra across the state is a similar thing. So we are really just unpacking our data to see where our students, need additional support, because we certainly don't want to see the trend continue. We still fare well and we fare above the state average, but in general, we're still unpacking that data. So as we learn more about what happened, and that's really what you're getting at, we'll be able to share that.
Okay. Very good.
Well, thank you. Well, we thank you. Thank you for
that, you talk 8,000 kids and come in and try and condense that all down into 20 minutes. That's a lot.
So many dynamics.
I'll see you Friday night at the second ribbon
We will
cutting.
be there and so looking forward to it.
And I just want to add, we have 174 days left of this school year to make a positive impact every day.
That's right.
I'm going to go home and
And
share
no
that.
snow days,
I'm going to
right,
go home
yeah,
and
no
share
snow
that
days.
information with my son.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you all.
Not counting weekends.
Not counting weekends.
That's right.
All right, Commissioners, our final presentation this evening is an update from the Healthy Waters Working Group and Envision the Choptank. We have Alan Gerard from the Chesapeake Bay Foundation and Mr. Tom Lee, the Regional Watershed Services Provider. And a surprise guest that they're going to introduce.
Do you want me to go ahead and do that now?
Sure.
Hi, I'm Joanna Ogburn, and I'll be presenting on Envision the Choptank, and Alan is just now passing out our common agenda, which I'll talk to you about in just a few.
Thanks, everyone. My name's Alan Gerard. I'm the Eastern Shore Director with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. Far to my left, Tom Lee. He's the Regional Watershed Services Manager with the Healthy Waters Working Group. And Joanna Ogburn with Ogburn and Associates. She's the facilitator for Envision the Choptank. We'll hear from both of these fine folks in a few minutes for some updates on local issues and priorities and progress on clean water after I give you a brief update on the state of the Bay, what projects and tools are working to restore the health of the Chesapeake, as an introduction to some of the local focus here. In your packets, there should be a agenda. This is near final for the Healthy Waters briefing and boat trip that's happening up on October 25th. You should have gotten a hold the date email on that. We'll be sending the final agenda to you and invite you to attend this. We'll give a little bit more detail on this at the end of the program. So what's going on with the Bay's health? A lot of you have been reading in the paper this summer, low oxygen dead zones, fish kills, record rainfall last year. U.S. county managers don't need any reminder of this, almost double the amount of rain that we've had in this region in a long time, has really been flushing a lot of sediments and nutrient pollution into the Bay and causing dead zones this year that are a bit larger than normal. However, over the long term, we have seen dead zones during the summer on average shrink in size. Underwater grasses now are record levels each of the last 5 years. We've seen female and juvenile crab populations increase. Oyster restoration activities are beginning to recover the oyster population. So over time, there has been progress in the recovery of the Chesapeake and the natural resources that it sustains. That progress is not by accident. It is because what we call the Chesapeake Clean Water Blueprint is working. That is the science-based, bipartisan, multi-state program to get the Bay off the federal dirty waters list. Maryland is a part of this process. Pennsylvania is a part of this process, along with the 4 other states that drain to the Chesapeake. What's going on with Maryland in relation to the Clean Water Blueprint? A lot of it hinges on what's known as these watershed implementation plans, the WIPs. This body have considered those in the past. In fact, Queen Anne's has invested in projects that contribute to progress that Maryland is making because of this statewide watershed implementation plan. The state just submitted its Phase 3 WIP to EPA just a couple weeks ago at the end of August. The first two phases happened beginning in 2010, setting out programs and priorities to put in place to, again, make progress on bay restoration. We are now at phase 3, where the state has, again, submitted to EPA a very detailed program to really finish the job of doing this saving the bay work. By 2025, have all the practices and policies in place that are able to meet water quality standards for the Chesapeake. That's what this third phase promises. I've got a 27-page comment letter that CBF put together that comments on the quality of that plan. A lot of the progress that the state expects will happen on the backs of wastewater treatment plant upgrades, from the flush fee you're familiar with, passed in the Ehrlich administration, updated by the General Assembly a few years back. That is going to help get Maryland over the finish line. Where that plan is lacking is in a couple areas. One, primarily, is stormwater. There has been progress made in the stormwater sector to some extent. The challenge is making sure that progress is made over the long term and is sustained. Right now, we expect that pollution from stormwater will surpass that of wastewater by 2025. Yet Maryland's WIP calls for about half of the level of effort from Marylanders to deal with stormwater pollution. That is a challenge. That's something that we commented to Maryland Department of Environment to address. Another piece is agriculture. By and large, agriculture is on track. The challenge with agriculture is things like cover crops that are put on an annual basis continue to need annual investment. I think the state invests somewhere in the neighborhood of $22 million a year into the cover crop program. That is each and every year that needs to be put into the ground to sustain gains made in the agriculture sector. What's missing in the state's WIP is permanent practices that require a one-time installation investment and maintenance over time that is much less than that one-time initial cash investment, which over the long term can make more gains for the bay. Things like riparian forest buffers are key to trying to continue to make progress and maintain that progress in the agriculture sector over time. So just a snapshot for Maryland and what's going on with Maryland's WIP. We got a lot of questions with Pennsylvania and how Pennsylvania is doing. Pennsylvania also submitted its state watershed implementation plan to EPA at the end of August. That plan is, it calls for over 20 new initiatives, new and continuing initiatives. They had 8 work groups. They are actually looking to counties to be part of the plan, unlike they have in years past. That is all good progress. However, they are still 27% short of the plan meeting their water quality target, and they are short $320 million a year annual needs for investment to try and make sure that that plan is implemented and stays on track. So shortage in percentage, shortage in investment. CBF is clear on its position with Pennsylvania. We want to make sure that agriculture does its share in that state. That means more state investment, federal investment in agriculture. It also means that EPA must meet its obligation to hold Pennsylvania accountable for its progress. This is a partnership involving all the Bay States. All Bay States play a role, and the EPA is there to enforce the partnership and make sure it succeeds. So we expect EPA to do its part to hold the Bay States accountable, including Pennsylvania, to make progress. One final point, and I'll turn it over to these folks. The Chester River, the Corsica River, the Tuckahoe River, all of those rivers here in Queen Anne's County have local sources of pollution that cause local problems in this community. Whether or not Pennsylvania and the Susquehanna is cleaned up has nothing to do with what the health of those waterways is here in this jurisdiction. So local action is critical by farmers, by stormwater managers, by wastewater treatment plant operators. You certainly have been making progress here. There's more progress to be made. I'll turn it over to Tom to give us some examples of the collaborative work here and what's being done locally, and then Joanna will follow up with some more information.
Thank you, Alan. Commissioners, good evening. As a bit of a brief back history for those of you who were not around when the process started, I'll start with back in 2015, Chesapeake Bay Foundation, Eastern Shore Land Conservancy, Hughes Center for Agroecology, and University of Maryland Sea Grant Extension convened all the Eastern Shore counties and municipalities into a body called the Healthy Waters Roundtable. And the idea there was to stay ahead and stay current and stay relevant and provide technical assistance where needed for these Eastern Shore jurisdictions who lack the technical assistance and capacity to compete with, say, the Anne Arundels, Prince George's, and Montgomery counties that have entire departments in their government structure to help with stormwater, to help with watershed implementation plans and bay restoration efforts. So those 9 counties and municipalities on the shore took 2 years, and they came up with 120 concepts that they thought would be helpful to them moving forward in advancing their clean water goals. Out of those 120 concepts, 6 core principles were pulled out or aggregated, and one of those was the Circuit Rider program. And that is essentially what brought me here to you today. So out of that Healthy Waters Roundtable, 6 jurisdictions convened to the Healthy Waters Working Group, Queen Anne's County being one, Talbot County, Easton and Oxford, Cambridge and Salisbury. So those 6 jurisdictions financially contributed. That was matched 1-to-1 by the State Department of the Environment. That money was then matched 1-to-1 with federal money from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. So you have non-governmental entities in Chesapeake Bay Foundation, who serves as my day-to-day supervisor. I also work for those 6 jurisdictions: Queen Anne's, Talbot, Easton, Oxford, Cambridge, Salisbury. Those are local. Those are 2 towns, 2 cities, 2 counties. So 1 NGO, the state, 2 counties, 2 towns, 2 cities. Talbot County Soil Conservation District and the federal government are all in this partnership that I'm here talking to you about tonight. So it's very unique, and what it is entirely predicated upon is to plan, prioritize, and procure services to help these jurisdictions reach these clean water goals in the aggregate, in a cooperative framework to where we test a regionalization of services approach to best management practice delivery, right? We can all save money by going to a large box store and buying a year's supply of toilet paper. If you can store it somewhere in your house, you'll save money doing that. It saves you trips back and forth. It saves you money because you buy in bulk. Can we, as jurisdictions locally, combine efforts and buy trees and plant them in the ground in that same model? Can we, instead of each of those 6 jurisdictions running bids for contractors to plant those trees 6 times, can we not run that through one bidding process and one contractor to plant the trees and one reporting structure to report that out? Can we find efficiencies in that framework? That is what I am here at the end of the day, at the end of this 3-year grant term, to test and run through and report out. The state is very interested in this because they would like to know if this model is reproducible throughout the state. The federal government, through the National Fish and Wildlife Group, is interested if this can be applied in other jurisdictions outside of the state, but in the Bay watershed. So there's a lot of interest and a lot of hope and backing from them financially, as well as in their non-jurisdictional support in a partnership from the state of Maryland. So the planning, prioritization, and procurement of service. The planning started. This county, all the 6 jurisdictions have some sort of watershed assessment, some plan, some grant, some government document that says these are our existing conditions either on our county or jurisdictional scale or at a watershed scale. They've typically been sitting there, they get referenced periodically, but they don't get used as they should and have they been designed. I went back, pulled those off the shelf, went through those, and looked for cross-jurisdictional opportunities, right? Maybe not all, but 4 to 5 out of the 6 jurisdictions, do they all have tree planting opportunities? Do they all have roadside ditch retrofit opportunities? Likely so, because we all have ditches. We all have green open space and corners that we could plant with trees. So we bundled 42 best management practices back in April and submitted those practices as in the aggregate to the Department of Natural Resources to their trust fund. Now, ultimately unsuccessful, that grant did, however, get DNR's attention. And as a matter of fact, just yesterday, I went out with county staff and DNR staff to tour 11 sites in Queen Anne's County that are hopefully going to, if funded in this next round of trust fund grant application, which we are encouraged and guided very closely by DNR to reapply, 12 locations, almost 22 acres of trees in Queen Anne's County alone that will be hopefully matched with some of these, the funds that we have currently in hand through my grant, as well as through the request that we're going to submit to DNR for almost $300,000 worth of trees. And that's just in Queen Anne's County. Working with Nancy Scazzari out of Parks and with her support from her additional staff. I worked with Shane Moore in Department of Public Works to locate 5 sections of roadside ditch retrofits, right? The ditches are the capillaries of the system. They are the primary conveyances of pollutants from the land into the streams, which then in turn go into the larger body of waters and into the bay. So these are opportunities. It's in the county's right of way. Shane doesn't have to ask permission to go into that. And there are retrofit opportunities to put treatments into the ditch where we retain and slow the flow, allow the sediments to settle out, and uptake some nutrients with some pollinators and other vegetative species that treat the water before it gets delivered to the receiving waters. And that is so that's almost about 8,600 linear feet of ditch, so over a mile and a half, and another $330,000 asked for Queen Anne's County alone to retrofit those ditches, again with Shane's oversight and partnership. Also, through part of my work, I've been working with Rob Gunter at Planning and a local nonprofit in Shore Rivers to secure funding from the Chesapeake Bay Trust to develop a master plan for Old Love Point Park. If you've ever been down there, it is almost devoid of any best management practice on a very popular field or location for lots of tournaments. Obviously, overflow from the high school and regional schools come and participate there. There's literally no shade for visitors and spectators to hide from. There's no treatment before water runs off the fields, off the property, into Cox Creek, and there are some tremendous opportunities to plant trees, and then the stream restoration of Cox Creek, if we can get that planned out and funded through this exercise, that will actually achieve the stream restoration goals for Queen Anne's County. So these are projects that I'm working to get designs and funding for, to get in the queue, hopefully to get some of it implemented before the departure of my tenure here and the expiration of the grant in about a year. If not, there will be plans, designs, and a path forward for the partners, specifically Queen Anne's County, my home county, thank you very much, to continue this work in my absence with other jurisdictional partners. They'll have designs in hand and some practices that they can go seek funding for or pay outright should they have the resources available. With that, there's a bit of an overlap with Joanna, which is why we've invited the Envision the Choptank team to represent. We are doing things like roadside ditches together. We obviously share.
Due to a roadside ditch. I mean, I'm thinking Route 18 and we got an open ditch.
Okay,
right
so
there between the Narrows and Safeway. So
there are several opportunities, and what we did is, I didn't want to go too far into weeds, but I'll go a little bit deeper for you here, Commissioner Moran, is Chesapeake Bay Foundation GIS Lab identified through some analyses flow paths of water and to identify where the best ditches would be to retrofit, meaning reshape, recontour the ditch.
Step ponds like?
Step ponds are one, also shelves on the ditch where the ditch is allowed to fill up with water and you plant some plants on the shelves.
I'm sitting there thinking you're going to plant trees in these ditches and I'm going,
no sir. Okay. But the ditch will not be maintained as you traditionally think of a ditch, right? The front side, meaning the roads, the side of the ditch closest to the road, will need to be maintained and mowed. The bottom of the ditch and the back side of the ditch that you typically see from your automobile will be allowed to grow up in a little bit taller grasses, maybe some pollinators, some beneficial plants to help absorb the nutrients that are running off the road or coming from the nearby land use, be it an ag field or residential property or impervious surface cover.
Just curious.
So it's a reshaping, recontouring. Shane Moore, DPW, likes it because it reduces his mowing maintenance. He mows one half versus both halves.
Do you have pictures of where that's been done? I know not with you, but that you can
absolutely
send us so we can
sure do. There are some pilot
that.
programs that Talbot County has done. Actually, Talbot County is producing a ditch maintenance manual that is expected out by the end of the year, and they are going to open that and advertise it because they want it to be applicable, and was developed actually to be applicable and reproducible throughout the shore. Looking at our unique soil types, our slopes or lack thereof in many cases, so that the local jurisdictions, departments of public work can make their own choices and put those ditches where they would get the most benefit.
Great.
Answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Ms. Ogburn.
Thank you. Yeah, so again, I'm Joanna Ogburn. Thank you all for having me here today and letting me speak to you about Envision the Choptank. I just wanted to give you a brief introduction to who we are, what we're doing, and how we're hoping to work more with local governments across the Choptank watershed, which is, again, why we thought doing a little tag team presentation might make sense to let you know about both efforts. Envision the Choptank is a collaborative initiative. It's not its own nonprofit, but we're a network of organizations and individuals that we've been bringing together now for about 3.5 years. So it started in late 2015, and at that time we had initial funding from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, so NOAA. And we had individuals representing, I think, 10 different organizations, from nonprofits like Chesapeake Bay Foundation, Eastern Shore Land Conservancy, Shore Rivers, also representatives from local, state, and federal government agencies. We had extension agents, soil conservation districts, universities, a lot of different folks coming together, all with the idea of finding ways that we could work a little bit more effectively and efficiently together, as opposed to all doing separate efforts throughout the Choptank watershed. So we came together in 2015 looking for ways to enhance the work that's going on in the Choptank related to conserving and restoring the watershed, and ways we can lift up everybody's work. At that time, we developed a shared mission statement to carry out together, and that is to provide swimmable, fishable waters, enhance the health and productivity of native oysters, and to do so in a way that best meets the needs of surrounding communities. So that's a mouthful, like all mission statements, but what we're really working towards is trying to improve and maintain water quality, habitats both in water and on land, and we want to do that in a way that takes into account the needs, the concerns of those that live in those areas, because ultimately nothing's really sustainable if those that live around it don't care about it, aren't interested and see the value. And that's really kind of the sweet spot for us, is trying to find that overlap between environmental objectives and values and what the community's needs and interests are. So when we can do projects that meet both of those, that's what we're really hoping to accomplish. We do work throughout all 5 counties that are in the Choptank watershed. So that's Talbot, Dorchester, Queen Anne's, Caroline, and a little piece of Kent County, Delaware. Here in Queen Anne's County, there is about a 4-mile wide swath that follows the Tuckahoe River north to about Ingleside and a little bit further. So that's the portion of Queen Anne's that falls within the Choptank watershed. So I hope that gives you enough of a picture in your minds there. In order for us to meet the shared mission that we all came up with and to carry that out across the watershed, we realized we really need to understand from those who are working on the ground what's working, what's not working in terms of the programs, the practices that we're doing to help conserve and restore the watershed. How can a collaborative be helpful? Where can we fill in the gaps that are needed? And so we did a stakeholder engagement process in 2016 and 2017, I believe. And we talked to over 800 stakeholders, so from residents to practitioners working in agriculture, conservation, community planning, health. And we did that through a series of interviews, through focus groups, and a phone survey with residents. And again, looking for what's working, what's not, what role can a collaborative play, and how do we meet those environmental objectives while also meeting the needs of the communities. We got a lot of information, a lot of feedback came back from all those discussions, and we worked with all those stakeholders that we'd engaged to shape all that information into strategies that we could take on together that will again help us meet that mission, swimmable, fishable waters, helping the communities, enhancing health and productivity of native oysters. And what we ultimately came up with is what you have in front of you. This is, we call it the Common Agenda for the Choptank Watershed. We just published it, I think, late 2018. So we're very excited to have this. And just like with the Healthy Waters Initiative, a good part of the common agenda of the strategies that are in here focus on working with county and municipal governments and really helping to provide the assistance, the information, the research, access to funding that's needed to take on the kinds of projects and planning to conserve and restore the watershed. We heard again and again from stakeholders, from the practitioners we work with. Local government is really where the rubber hits the road. This is where things really get done. And there is a gap that exists in providing the access to funds, the partnerships, the research, the data to help with these types of projects, these type of planning efforts with the ditch retrofits like Tom talked about. So you'll see in here in the conserve section, there's quite a few strategies related to doing just that. So this next step for us is we are developing working groups with those actively engaged in Envision and those new to the initiative. We're hoping those will carry out individual or multiple strategies within the common agenda. We actually have several upcoming discussions this week and next week related to working groups for working with local governments and communities that are typically left out of conservation and restoration activities. And some of your planning staff will be attending those meetings. I actually had a month with several of those folks about a month ago, and heard a little bit more about what you're working on, what they're working on. Of course, the upcoming comp plan update, I think, that's happening here. And so we've already got the ball rolling a little bit, but excited to keep working with you all. We also have some working groups that have been going on for several months. One of those recently wrote a grant that awarded $1 million to Envision the Choptank to continue this network and to take on some best management practices. One piece of that follows on the work that CBF and Tom has done. We're going to be working with local governments, municipalities, soil conservation districts to create some maps, some tools to show where the best places are to put those ditch retrofit practices, also where to put things like wetland restoration and buffers. Where are the best places to put those in each county to get the best reduction and to help meet those WIPs in the best way possible? So those products will be coming out later this year. They will be building on the efforts that CBF has already done related to the ditch prioritization work, and they're actually still working with us and doing that part of the grant alongside the Nature Conservancy. Also through this grant, we're going to be developing some incentive programs to provide landowners with funds to help implement these best management practices. And those will either build off of or provide an alternative to those existing cost share programs that you may be familiar with. And especially for something like ditch retrofits, there isn't a cost share program. So there really isn't any money out there, as you guys probably already know, to help with that. So we're hoping these monies can do just that. We're thinking the funds that we have, we can probably get 230 to 250 acres of restoration completed. And that'll be across the Choptank watershed, but we've committed to doing projects in each of the counties. So we're going to be working very closely with your planning staff, with Soil Conservation District here, to figure out, again, where are the best places to do that work here in Queen Anne's and how to build off the work that you guys have already done. So that's just one project of many that we're starting. Like I said, we've got new working groups starting up. Hoping the next time we talk to you, we'll have some more updates for you. But with that, I just want to thank you for letting me share this information. Hope to see you all again soon. And I will pass it off to Alan for some final remarks.
That's a brief introduction. More on October 25th, Friday. Both of these agendas in your packet, they're slightly different, and I just want to draw your attention. One is an agenda that begins at 9:30 and ends at 1:15. Another one begins at 11:45 and ends at 3:30. So you have two options to attend the briefing and boat trip. Most of the Choptank localities are invited, including Salisbury outside the Choptank, but they're a partner on Tom's project, so we're inviting them as well. Elected officials from towns and counties joining us for some time inside, some time out in the field, and then some time on a boat. The program begins and ends in Oxford at the community center. Again, either 9:30 in the morning or 11:45. I'll send out registration instructions in the next few days, and sign up early because space is limited. We want you all to come.
Very good.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So Tom, that project you were talking about for Old Love Point Park.
Yes, sir.
What you're trying to do is secure the funding to do the engineering portion of it?
We have funding to do a park master plan.
Okay.
So that will identify opportunities and locations for whatever practice the site dictates. It could be trees, it could be a bioswale, it could be a small pocket wetland. The stream on the back edge along Cox Creek is certainly an opportunity. And then what that will grant the county is information that they can then go out and leverage and find implementation funds for. So you have to have that's step one, is getting that master plan in place. Step two is then going out and seeking funding to implement those practices.
Okay, very good. We've done that in the past, so.
Sir, is it your impression that the EPA has been pressing Pennsylvania adequately in terms of its enforcement?
They did withhold some federal funds for some projects a few years ago. There's certainly more that can be done. And You know, the good news is that they've been clear on what their responsibility is, have said that when a jurisdiction fails to make progress, that the agency, EPA, has an obligation to issue consequences for failure to make that progress. Those things can include adding smaller agriculture operations to federal permits, adding more obligations for stormwater permitted discharge, withholding grant funds or accelerating grant funds for certain projects. You know, a lot of these permitting programs that help regulate pollution discharges in a state jurisdiction have their roots at our federal level, and the administration of which happens in partnership with the state. So there's room for the federal government to issue those consequences, and it's our intention to ensure that they do that if a jurisdiction fails to make sufficient progress.
Local law is that there's quite a lot of pollution coming in from farms, feedlots, and so on up in Pennsylvania, and that this situation just drifted on, and the EPA was really not. They have the capacity to enforce it, but apparently not very energetically. And I'm asking you, is that a job that you should be pressing them about, or where are we with that?
Well, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation is pressing them about that. So, we're doing that. As constituents in Queen Anne's County that are in the state of Maryland, we urge you to partner with Maryland to urge EPA to make sure it does its job and holds the neighboring jurisdictions accountable that aren't making sufficient progress.
So I think what Commissioner Wilson was really asking, in your opinion, are they really making leaps and bounds to convince your organization that there's a genuine effort up there? Or is it just a dog and pony show?
Is Pennsylvania making leaps and bounds to convince us that they're making progress? Is that your question?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Go get them.
Come on.
As we know you can.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Tommy, good seeing you.
Thanks. Good too. I'll share that last data of. I'm very impressed with that school data, by the way.
Oh yeah.
We're doing well. How many days they have left?
74. All right, Commissioners, if you want to turn to tab 7, we have one legislative item this evening. It's text amendment, County Ordinance 1915, prohibition of the use of shipping containers as accessory structures in Queen Anne's County for introduction.
I'll introduce it.
Okay.
Soon we're gonna have to do one on where pole buildings go. Because we got pole buildings going up everywhere. Yeah.
All right, well, that brings us to our press and public comments section, part 2. Thank you for taking the time to express your views to the County Commissioners during this public comment period. Comments are limited to 3 minutes in length. Comments longer than 3 minutes should be submitted in writing. When you come forward, please speak clearly at the standing microphone, state your name, address, topic of interest. Keeping with the dignity of the office, we ask that all views be expressed in a respectful and civil manner. The Commission respects your desire and right to convey your message freely. We ask as a courtesy to the Board and our citizens that you respect the Commissioner's request to refrain from naming citizens and name calling when offering any critique.
So, nobody has signed up to speak. Would anybody like to speak? Seeing none, we'll close press and public comment. We'll go to roundtable and Mr. Wilson.
Do you want to start or do you not want to start?
It's all good.
Last week we started that and we'll start it this time.
Flip it around. So, first a couple things, I guess some housekeeping things. I spoke to Jim about this, just kind of want to put it on record so that people up there know the walking path around the Crumpton Park area. Jim's going to be addressing Park and Recs tomorrow about that,
Trails.
to look into putting that trail in down by the river, similar to kind of what we're doing at Conquest, but it'll be we got 50-some acres up there to put a trail around. Be nice. The parking lot and the driveway paving up there, get some kind of schedule on when that's supposed to be done. And Shad, we spoke earlier about the pond in Sutlersville at the senior center. Did we get a chance to look at that today, or is that going to be something?
We'll take a look at that today. It probably needs a little bit of mowing and trimming, so we'll take care of that.
All right, perfect. And obviously, Project Bright Future, September 25th. We have one more meeting before that. Sign up, just show up. It doesn't matter. It's free, so come on out. We have good sign up so far, so I'm really encouraged about a good turnout. And lastly, obviously tomorrow is 9/11. Let's just not forget so we do not repeat.
Very good. Mr. Wilson, the senior.
It's pleasing that our animal department, I would just like to remark again, has managed to get through a year with, I think, not a complaint. So I'm pleased that our efforts in that direction have been successful. And I'd like to compliment you folks who did the purple thing to get those whole events going and running, and please accept our congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Dumas. There now.
So Friday night, weather was a little difficult, but we had the opportunity to do the ribbon cutting for the turf fields at Kent Island High School, and proud to say that the girls varsity field hockey team beat North Carolina 14-0, and the boys football team, who played at 7 o'clock after the girls played on field, also won their game, I believe 30-14 over Saratsville. So it was a great turnout. Again, credit goes to the efforts of Parks and Recs, the Board of Education, the commissioners here, and some other folks that played a pivotal role in making this happen. And I know we have a tremendous amount of student athletes at Kent Island High School. They're very excited that this is the opportunity they're going to get to play on turf. And then I know Friday, we're going to be doing it for Queen Anne's. Mm-hmm. And so on that, I'll let you share that.
We'll go to Chris first.
Thank Commissioner Moran for spending time his weekend going around putting up all these signs for Queen Anne's County Go Purple.
The ground is
don't
hard.
Realize
I would
that
tell you how hard that
his
ground
own
is.
efforts, and it's physical activity for you. So I'm glad to see you out there, breaking a sweat for the county. And remind everybody, school is back in session. So please, when you see school buses and they have their flashing lights on, stop. There's kids getting off and getting on. Let's make sure they get to school and back home safely.
You will get a ticket now.
And you will get a ticket now.
Very good. Well, so this Friday we are going to dedicate the Queen Anne's County Lions new turf field also. That's at, we're going to get there at 6:30, all of us, but I think it comes around 6:45, 6:50 that goes on. Looking forward to getting that second field started, and they've done some other improvements there. So they do. They're both extremely nice, and it's long overdue. And you're right, we have a lot of athletes that affects, and also affects our parks department. So that's less work they have to do on those fields to do other fields, and those are fields that we can use continuously to generate the revenue that we need to maintain those fields every 10 years to replace them. So that's a good thing. This Thursday night, at Kent Island High School, it's the all electronic tolling. The state's going to be there, so please come out and let your voice be heard. The sooner they go to all electronic tolling, the sooner the toll booths go away, the sooner the traffic will flow freer. And so I mean, this is 2 weeks before they close down the right lane, and we're down to 2 lanes. And talking to our school board and other people, it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge for 6 months of no contraflow, especially for all of our commuters going over in the morning, only 2 lanes, and coming home knowing there's only 2 lanes. And as you can see last Friday at the football game, at 6 p.m. in the evening, there was a 7-mile backup because there was no contraflow. So, I think that the public needs to be aware of this. Flex time with work. Whatever you need to do, you need to start thinking about your commute so you don't get trapped on one side or the other, and basically just lose your mind over that. But the last thing I want to talk about is I think we all got an email today from MDTA, and there was a group that was called the Bay Bridge Reconstruction Advisory Board, better known as the BRAG. And that was in existence for, I think it was back in 2005. I'm looking at the original bill now. And that was to get people from Anne Arundel County, people from Queen Anne's County, and MDTA together, and SHA, I believe, to discuss of ways to get when this was back when they did the redecking originally, and to discuss issues with the bridge, issues with traffic, and outreach to the community. Well, that was done by a Senate Bill 625 in 2005. And I have Senate Bill 625 with me, and I'm going to distribute it to my fellow commissioners. But what we received in an email today from MDTA is they're wanting to get rid of this bill and basically by resolution say that we're going to handpick who we want on the board. We're going to meet 4 times a year, and every month they expect a report to be given to the chairman, who they're going to pick to be the chairman. And then in a year, if they don't think it's any good, they want to dissolve it altogether. And I think that that's just deplorable for them to even suggest such a thing when we've been living with the backups in the summer. We're going to be living with them in the summer. We're going to be living with them in the winter, down losing a lane, and then to tell us, well, and we don't want to hear about your issues. And that's exactly what this is. So I think that we're going to have our county attorney look at this, because I find it hard to believe through a resolution MDTA can dissolve a law that was put on the books that says who's on the committee, how they're appointed, and what their responsibilities are. So this is something we're looking into for the citizens of Queen Anne's County, so we have some sort of representation of what goes on that bridge, be it little now, hopefully much larger later. So that's all I got to say, except for, Chris, did you spill your water?
Jim, real quick, have you heard anything about with the electronic tolling? Is there any talk of going back to capturing westbound tolling?
No.
Yeah, I mean, years ago, years ago, you used to get it both ways, and
right.
I mean, obviously, we're going to have to build a bridge here. I mean, I'm thinking that's something, and I mean, I hate to do that, but I think it's something I have to look at in terms of financing any new bridge, no matter where it goes, is that, you know, we're basically, the traffic we're getting down 301 now is to avoid tolls. And I mean, I don't know if they've said whether they're going to go ahead and do it to capture it both ways again, because if it's high speed, it's not going to matter. I mean, they took them out years ago because of backups, which is why they want to take them out on the other side.
Exactly, because at that time they were backing up onto the bridge. So
right.
Yes, you know, and that's yet again, you know, I know we discussed, Commissioner Wilson and I discussed this 2 years ago about a bridge authority. You know, getting Anne Arundel County, ourselves, and the state together to sit down, because it affects really Anne Arundel County and us the most. Right out of the gate, we're the ones that are dealing with the traffic. Our citizens are dealing with the time lost. And it would be nice to be able to have a seat at the table and discuss some of these things, but, you know, at this present time, that's not feasible. But we'll see if that changes. So with that being said,
Motion to
entertain
adjourn.
a motion. We got a
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.